Welcome to the world of Mob Psycho 100. Follow Shigeo Mob Kageyama, a seemingly ordinary middle schooler with extraordinary psychic powers, as he battles evil spirits, faces dangerous psychics, and struggles with everyday life. Mob's emotional journey is packed with action, humor, and heart. Reigen agrees to help Hanako get rid of a spirit, explaining the costs and that completely removing a spirit is tough, but Hanako's boyfriend, Taro, doesn't believe Reigen is a real psychic and thinks he's a fraud. When they arrive at Hanako's place, a spirit appears, surprising everyone. Reigen quickly tries to use salt to get rid of it, but it doesn't work because it's just regular store-bought salt. Turns out it's only good for seasoning, not exorcisms. He then calls Mob, his student, who arrives and easily defeats the spirit. Later, Mob asks why Reigen needed his help for such a weak spirit, and Reigen remarks that he's just really powerful and could accidentally cause him damage. Mob has dinner with his family, and while eating, he accidentally bends a spoon with his powers. His mother jokes that if he keeps bending spoons, they'll start taking money from his allowance to replace them. The next day, Mob goes to school and sees Tsubumi, the girl he likes. He struggles with his math and physics classes. After school, Reigen calls Mob for a big job and they head to Honedo Tunnel, which is known for mysterious disappearances. Reigen thinks the tunnel, which was closed after a biker gang died there 30 years ago, is haunted by their hatred, and he quickly runs out as soon as they enter, asking why Mob didn't go in first. Mob says he thought Reigen had it under control, but admits the tunnel felt creepy. Inside, Mob senses spirits around them, and Reigen runs into a large spirit, thinking it's a wrestler, but it's actually the leader of the biker gang. The leader explains that he and his gang died in a crash and were forced to attack people. Mob defeats the leader, who reveals there's an even more powerful spirit deeper in the tunnel. Mob confronts and defeats this stronger spirit and then returns to Reigen. He helps the leader pass on peacefully by giving him a photo of his gang, and later, Mob asks Reigen why he didn't do more, so Reigen remarks that he was leaving the weaker spirits for Mob to handle. Reigen tells a client he's been cursed by a digital curse from one-click lewd sites that affected his shoulder, making him compulsively click, because of which he needs to get a massage. Although the client is hesitant to pay at first, he ends up enjoying the massage and decides to return. Meanwhile, Mob wonders if it's okay to keep living the way he is, but he doesn't have any other goals. The telepathy club loses a member, and Hikaru, the student council vice president, warns them that they need 5 members by Friday, or the club will be shut down. Tome and the others start searching for a new member, but everyone turns them down, thinking their club is weird. Mamita remembers that Mob isn't in a club and hurriedly calls him. Tome nearly convinces Mob to join, but Mob calls Reigen, who argues with Tome about taking Mob. Reigen convinces Mob not to join, but Mamita explains that they just want to have fun and create a chill space for themselves. Tome begs Mob to reconsider, and he agrees to think about it. Reigen and Mob go to a private girls' academy dressed as girls, but are stopped at the gates. The guards call Reigen a pervert and don't let him in, but they don't realize Mob is a boy and allow him inside. Mob meets the client on the roof, who explain the strange events happening there. Mob finds the spirit in the basketball hall and easily defeats him. The spirit, feeling a connection to Mob, asks if he's truly living life to the fullest. After thinking it over, Mob decides to join the telepathy club, but ultimately joins the body improvement club instead, hoping to improve himself and confess to Tsubumi, who knew love was a workout. Mob starts training with the body improvement club, but quickly gets exhausted and collapses. The telepathy club is allowed to keep the room since the body improvement club only needed it for storing equipment. Musashi Goda finds Mob collapsed and brings him back to the telepathy club, asking them to look after him. When Mob wakes up, he explains that he joined the body improvement club to improve himself. Tome realizes Mob wants to become popular, but tells him it won't work. After Mob shows his psychic powers, she asks him to help her find extraterrestrials using telepathy, but Mob says he has other things to do. Mob then visits Reigen, who notices that he is troubled by love and reassures him, saying it's normal to want to be popular. On his way home, a woman approaches Mob, guessing that his sadness is related to love, and offers to help him become popular. Mob agrees and follows her to a secret meeting of the cult, where he meets his classmate, Ichi Misato. The cult leader Dimple appears and gives his speech, which makes everyone laugh, but Mob realizes Dimple is using masks to brainwash them. Ichi, suspicious of Dimple, also gets brainwashed. However, Mob, unaffected by the mask, tries to leave. Dimple challenges Mob to a milk drinking contest, but even after trying to use psychic powers on him, Mob remains unaffected. Dimple mocks Mob, saying he'll be left alone since he doesn't have any emotions. Realizing Dimple is an evil spirit, Mob's bottled-up emotions reach 100% and he easily defeats Dimple. Whoa! Mob later regrets stopping the group's fun, but Reagan explains that only Mob could have saved them, and the next morning, Mob wakes up to find a weakened Dimple who cheerily greets him. Tenga and his gang from Salt Middle School face off against Tsuyoshi and his crew from Black Vinegar Middle School. Although Tenga easily defeats them, they call for Teruki, who quickly overwhelms Tenga and his group. Dimple shows up to Mob, who slams him into the ground to see if he's dreaming. Realizing Dimple is the spirit from the day before, Mob gets ready to exorcise him, but Dimple begs for mercy, saying he has a dream of becoming a god. He suggests teaming up with Mob, but Mob isn't interested and nearly exorcises him anyway, so Dimple promises not to cause any trouble. Talk about priorities. Mob agrees to let him follow him around at school and later brings him to Reagan, saying Reagan is his master and will decide what to do with him. Dimple realizes Reagan is a fraud, but keeps quiet. Since Reagan can't see Dimple, he assumes Dimple is a weak spirit and tells Mob to handle it however he likes. Ichi talks to Ritsu about Mob and mentions a new psycho helmet religion centered around him, wanting to learn more about his powers. Ritsu insists Mob's abilities aren't for show and leaves. Later, Ritsu tries to bend a spoon but fails. The next day, he asks Mob why he doesn't use his powers more often, so Mob explains he doesn't get the chance to use them much, and that things can't be achieved with powers alone. Dimple tries to encourage Mob, but Mob's focus on gaining muscles and wisdom leaves him speechless. Tenga asks the Body Improvement Club to help fight Black Vinegar, but Musashi refuses. Tenga tricks Mob with a fake love letter, leading him into a trap. However, the Body Improvement Club rescues Mob, but Teruki arrives, defeats everyone, and confronts Mob, so he warns Teruki not to use his psychic powers to fight others. Teruki is surprised to meet another psychic and says he has a lot of questions, but first needs to show off his strength. He attacks Mob, but his attacks have no impact. Mob tries to make peace by offering a handshake, but Teruki stays on guard and keeps his distance. Mob explains to Dimple that he won't fight because Reagan taught him not to use psychic powers against others, comparing it to pointing a knife at someone. Teruki keeps attacking Mob, slamming him into the ground, so Dimple suggests calling it a draw since Mob won't fight, but Teruki refuses. With no other option, Dimple uses the last of his power to fight, but is quickly erased by Teruki. Mob remembers how Dimple encouraged him and realizes that Dimple was a better person than Teruki. Angry, Teruki decides to use his full strength, throwing Mob into the ground and against the school building. He even attacks Mob with knives, but Mob deflects them, accidentally cutting off Teruki's hair. Enraged, Teruki keeps attacking, but Mob refuses to fight back, saying that without his powers, Teruki is just like him, nothing. Teruki starts choking Mob, who remembers hurting others with his powers in the past. Mob eventually passes out, but then wakes up with overwhelming power, chucking Teruki into the air along with the shattering parts of the building. Teruki, scared by Mob's power, regrets his actions, realizing he is just an average person. Mob later rebuilds the school, feeling sad about using his powers against Teruki. The Body Improvement Club checks on Mob, making Teruki realize he's lost. Mob searches for Dimple but can't find him, and later at home, Ritsu comforts Mob and reassures him that past incidents weren't his fault. He then watches TV, recalling that Mob was unconscious during the incident and something else had taken over. Reagan holds a seance for a client named Hitoshi and connects with Hitoshi's late father. When Reagan realizes the father is American, he jokingly says that translating the conversation would cost extra, but Hitoshi is okay with speaking in English. Reagan continues in Japanese, and Hitoshi asks his father for the password to his safe. When Reagan can't provide it, Hitoshi gets upset, forcing Reagan to knock him out in self-defense. Mob then thinks about whether using his powers for self-defense is right, imagining extreme situations. Reagan advises Mob that it's fine to use his powers to help others, but warns him not to overdo it. Ichi figures out that Teruki is also psychic and talks to Mob about it, but Mob doesn't want to discuss it. Tome overhears and asks Mob if there are other psychics like him. Mob confirms that there are, but he hasn't encountered any. Tome asks Mob to help her find telepaths, and they go out a few times. During one outing, Mob sees a dangerous adult psychic but doesn't tell Tome. Meanwhile, Tenga looks for the person who beat Teruki and later apologizes to Mob. Ritsu, seeing this, mistakenly thinks Tenga is bullying Mob. Cue the brotherly instincts kicking in. At a school council meeting, Ritsu suggests cracking down on delinquents, and the idea is approved. Later, Kenji Mitsura, who mistakes Ritsu for Mob, invites him to his awakening lab, so Ritsu goes but is disappointed by the weak psychics there. Rumors circulate about white tea poison defeating Teruki, attracting gang leaders from different schools who want to challenge him. Meanwhile, Ritsu meets Dimple, who explains how he came back, though he's much weaker and can't even enter the house. Dimple notices that Ritsu can see him, so he claims Ritsu has psychic powers and suggests teaming up to make him stronger than Mob. He tricks Ritsu into letting him take over his body, but because he's so weak, he can't control Ritsu. However, with Dimple's help, Ritsu starts using his psychic powers and gets stronger. At school, Shinji and Ritsu keep framing troublemakers for stealing and being perverts. One day, some of these troublemakers confront Ritsu, knowing he set them up, but with Dimple's help, Ritsu defeats them using his powers. Teruki shows up and says that Ritsu reminds him of how he used to be. Dimple tells Ritsu to run, but Ritsu wants to test his strength and challenges Teruki, only to quickly realize he's not strong enough. As the wind blows, Teruki grabs his wig, giving Ritsu and Dimple a chance to escape. A woman tricks Mob into breaking an expensive vase and angrily asks for payment. Reigen shows up, sees through the scam, and pretends to be hurt, asking for compensation. The scammers claim the vase carries a curse, but Reigen threatens to release a spirit on them, scaring them. Mob later reveals that the spirit was actually real. Teruki finds Mob and brings him to Ritsu, who had been pretending to be Mob. When Teruki realizes Ritsu is Mob's brother, he decides to leave, not wanting to see them fight. Mob is surprised that Ritsu defeated all those people, but Ritsu explains that now he has psychic powers, he's no longer afraid of Mob. Ritsu admits that he used to act nice and avoid upsetting Mob because he knew he couldn't defend himself against Mob's powers. Knowing he can't win, Dimple runs away while Ritsu attacks Mob. When Mob sees Ritsu's powers, he unexpectedly congratulates him and apologizes to the people Ritsu beat up, even getting on his knees as they demand. Meanwhile, Yusuke breaks into the Awakening Lab, gathers information on Shigeo Kageyama, believing he's Ritsu, and sends Koyama after him. When Megumu confirms Shigeo's identity, he attacks Ritsu, beats everyone, and makes them kneel. He tries to take Ritsu away, but Mob fights back. Despite Mob's efforts, Megumu easily breaks his barrier and badly beats him up. Ritsu tries to help but gets beaten too. Mob's anger hits 100% and he overpowers Megumu, who can't break his barrier anymore. Megumu uses his energy bomb, but it doesn't work. The gangs realize Mob is white tea poison and cheer for him. Megumu sprays Mob, knocking him out. He then tries to kill the gang members, but Mob stands up, forcing Megumu to escape with Ritsu. The gang thanks Mob, but Teruki warns them to stay back as it's still dangerous. Mob wakes up at Teruki's place where he explains that Megumu is from Claw, a group of dangerous psychics with over 100 members who brainwash young psychics into soldiers. They wonder why Ritsu was targeted, and Dimple thinks the Awakening Lab was involved, with information probably leaked from there. When they investigate, they find the lab was attacked and meet Kenji Mitsura, who says he invited Shigeo, but Ritsu pretended to be him and other psychics from the lab were also kidnapped. Looks like Ritsu's impersonation just got him in deep. Megumu and Yusuke lead Ritsu and the other psychics through a forest to a secret facility. When Yusuke and Megumu arrive at Claw's 7th Division building, Yusuke is shocked that Ritsu hurt Megumu. Megumu explains it was actually a much stronger psychic kid who forced him to use a special spray to escape, as he couldn't match the kid's power. Yusuke is frustrated because their orders were to capture the strongest psychics, but Megumu let one go. Terada overhears and offers to help, ensuring the division leader won't find out. Yusuke doubts Terada can win, but Megumu assures him that Terada is stronger but didn't take the kid seriously. If he had, he could have easily won, but Terada won't make the same mistake. Teruki offers to help Mob, warning that a Claw member will soon come for them. Terada shows up but underestimates Mob and is quickly defeated. Teruki tortures Terada, forcing him to reveal information. Meanwhile, the 7th Division's upper echelon leaders meet, and their leader informs them that the boss will return to Japan in a month and select members for HQ, excluding Megumu due to his failure. Ritsu and other psychics refuse to join Claw, but Muto tries to convince them by killing Kaito. However, Daichi reveals Kaito is alive and Ritsu plans an escape. He defeats the guards and searches for Kaito with Rei's help. Terada leads Mob and Teruki to their base but tries to escape. Teruki is captured, but Mob defeats Terada, who then realizes Mob is unstoppable. The upper echelon realizes they're definitely facing someone powerful when Mob easily defeats Megumu by smashing him into the ceiling. Ritsu and his group find Kaito and try to rescue him but are caught. A man lets them go, saying they can't win against psychics but stays with Claw, hoping for rewards when the group takes over the world. Teruki, Dimple, and Mob go separate ways as Dimple finds a strange door and runs into some men who realizes he's a fake. He easily defeats them and enters, discovering it's an awakening room where pain is used to trigger powers. Matsuo, an upper echelon member, shows up and wants Dimple for his ghost collection. Teruki defeats some men and learns Ritsu and the others have escaped their cell. While searching, Miyagawa attacks the flames, bragging about his pyrokinesis. However, Teruki uses his barrier to make Miyagawa burn himself, defeating him, but Yusuke and Muraki knock Teruki out. Ritsu beats some weak opponents before a Sho shows up, and Ritsu decides to fight him to let the others escape. Mob fights Tsuchiya but hesitates due to his master's lessons. Tsuchiya declares that he wants a fair fight. Meanwhile, Dimple battles Matsuo, who uses spirits as pets, but Dimple cleverly outsmarts him. Tsuchiya is defeated, but Ishiguro sends Takeuchi, who Mob easily defeats. Mob then finds Ritsu under Muto's hypnosis, reaching 100% rejection and knocks out Muto before fainting. Sho reveals Mob reversed Muto's illusion and takes Ritsu and Mob to the division leader. Matsuo arrives, saying he trapped Dimple in a jar with 100 evil spirits as Hoshino and the other psychics reach the gates, sensing a strong psychic, thinking the boss is coming. But it's Reigen entering the building. In a dream, Mob gets lost in a forest.
I'm totally lost.
With his brother Ritsu, who eventually guides them out. When Mob wakes up in a room with Ritsu and Teruki, he's relieved that Ritsu is okay. Teruki notes that they can't use their powers there, but Mob is confident that Ritsu will figure something out. The upper echelon plans to brainwash Mob and the others to recruit them, but Sho says they'll be taken to HQ instead. Meanwhile, Reigen tracks Mob's GPS to the building. The guards are suspicious of him, but he pretends to be important, claiming to be there to discuss work with his subordinate, hearing which they believe he's Claw's boss. Inside, he scolds the guards for stopping the kids from escaping and is brought to Mob's group. Everyone is shocked to learn that Reigen is Mob's master, so he orders for them to be released and starts to leave, but the upper echelon arrives. Ishiguro attacks, but Teruki protects Reigen. Mob steps in to fight, but Reigen reminds him not to use his powers on humans. Mob becomes enraged, but Reigen slaps him, calming him down and urging him not to fight, warning that he'll regret it. Mob recalls how he first met Reigen, who initially thought Mob was joking but soon realized his powers were real and began teaching him. In the present, Yusuke suddenly slashes Reigen from behind, making him collapse in front of Mob. Seeing Reigen lying in front of Mob, Ritsu senses danger, fearing Mob won't handle it well. Mob, reluctant to harm anyone, realizes that if he does nothing, they will die, so he decides to trust his master. Reigen stands up, unharmed, and seems confused by Yusuke's katana, which seems fake. Shocked, Yusuke tries to slash him again, but fails again, before Reigen takes the sword from his hands and easily breaks it, leaving them speechless. Matsuo uses his ultimate spirit, but Reigen barely feels it and destroys it with a punch. Muraki sends clones, but Reigen easily dispels them. Mob temporarily transfers all his power to Reigen, who now at 1000% starts battling Ishiguro, effortlessly popping his black holes like bubbles. Despite Ishiguro's gravity attacks, Reigen remains standing, revealing his strong barrier. Bro actually turned out to be the final boss. He defeats Ishiguro, unmasking him as an old man, not a young girl. Before Sho arrives, easily defeats Ishiguro and leaves, disappointed in the 7th Division. Matsuo's final spirit is defeated by Dimple, who returns with his powers. Mob collapses from exhaustion, and Teruki, with Kenji and the others, plans to become stronger together. Later, Reigen and Mob go search for Tsunoko, but instead find Matsutake mushrooms after running into a gigantic spirit. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this journey with Mob, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.